Our protagonist, the elfin mage Frieren, and her 3 compatriots, fondly named the Hero Party, are returning to the royal capital to be lauded for achieving what has been an epic 10-year quest, defeating the Demon King. This is the blink of an eye for Frieren, who at this point is over 1,000 years old. Her fellow adventurers are human hero Himmel, who dealt the final blow to the Demon King and is the man of the hour, dwarven warrior Eisen, and human priest Heiter. Their quest complete, the Hero Party disband, but before peeling off to go their separate ways, they view the Era Meteors, a once-in-50 years event. Showing us early on how aloof she is from the rhythms and wants of the human world, Frieren sets off to build her magical spell compendium without looking back. 50 years later, she reunites with her former comrades in order to view the Era Meteors once more. She seemingly hasn't aged a day, but her companions are now well into their golden years, and not long after reuniting, Himmel passes. With uncharacteristically pure, raw, agonizing misery, Frieren breaks down at his funeral, questioning why she didn't get to know more about Himmel in the time they had together. This question is a breakthrough for her. There is a beauty in death, in that it makes us appreciate life. Although she has lived over 20 human lifespans, Frieren has been aloof from the human condition, the true frailty and briefness of their mortal coil. Remember the first time you felt loss? I mean, true loss. Yeah, you know what she's going through here then. And now, bursting forth from this realization, she is set upon the path of personal growth that we walk with her for the next 27 episodes. Frieren is determined, at over 1,000 years old, to actually connect with humans. Not just as an interesting piece of fauna that she should be nice to, but as people. Better late than never, I guess. Frieren Beyond Journey's End is one of those rare gems of a show that actually tries to find answers to the question, what happens after heroes save the day? Where do they go? And who do they become after they ride off into the sunset? Perhaps because of the new lens through which she sees the world, Frieren allows herself to have a young human mage, Frieren, foisted upon her by Heiter 20 years after Himmel's death. Frieren, who is saved from demons by Heiter at a young age, kicks butt at mana control and learns fast. Heiter, on his deathbed, urges Frieren to leave quickly with Frieren. She protests and vehemently denies his request. Still ever regretful of the time she should have spent with Himmel, she wants Frieren to be there with Heiter as much as she can. Heiter, the irreverent priest, does pass away though, and after a heartfelt send-off for him, Frieren and Frieren embark on a journey that will retrace the steps that the Hero Party once trod many years prior, and ultimately aim to end up in the Aureole in the far north, the apparent resting place of souls. She badly wants to find Himmel's soul in order to talk with him. Via a small side adventure to honor Himmel with the rediscovery of the ultra-rare blue moonweed flower in the Turk region, they eventually make their way to the trade city of Varm. In Varm, Frieren and Frieren bond over shopping for sweets, accessories, and in yet another demonstration of Frieren's efforts to empathize with humans, a surprise birthday present for Frieren. This show is just amazing, laden with themes galore around the passage of time, the spirit of resilience, and the importance of learning imbued in every episode. Take Frieren and Frieren's action-packed fight with big-time demon Qual, for example. The elder sage of corruption, Qual, was considered incomprehensibly powerful at the time of the Hero Party. They just couldn't defeat him. What with his demonic Zoltrak offensive spell and all. Now, reappearing from the exile to which Frieren sealed him all those years ago, he attacks her and Frieren with his once indomitable Zoltrak, only to be blocked and killed so anticlimactically, so offhandedly, that we need to take a second here and figure out just how this happened. Well, here's the scoop. In the decades since his reign of terror, human mages have been analyzing Zoltrak, unpicking its apparently mystical, devastating effects. And guess what? Zoltrak is now seen as so white bread that Fern, although to be fair, she is an innately gifted mage, has been able to perform it since she was a child. A child, guys! Just like the weirdly fast progression of all things innovative between Avatar: The Last Airbender and its sequel series, The Legend of Korra. It seems that humans in Frieren's universe have these bursts of innovation and progression over short time spans. Although, how independent humans really are in all things magic and mage mastery is something we'll get into towards the end of the video. Anyway, tangent over. For now. Himmel has been gone now for 27 years, and Frieren and Fern's relationship continues to gain this beautiful complexity and depth, more like a mother-daughter dynamic instead of a master and apprentice. Frieren is a millennium old, and is only now discovering the joy that comes with living and being alongside someone she is more often considering to be family. A villager approaches them as they arrive at the Grand Channel in the Central Lands, and the two mages have one heck of a time cleaning up a neglected beach. After this, they settle into the rhythms of village life for a few months, taking the time to live what could almost be considered a normal life. And yes, I am referring to the sunrise scene in all of its mundane beauty, its appreciation of not the destination, but the journey, the value in doing everyday things with the people you love. And no, I don't care that every other Frieren video points this out too. It's a real thing, people. Frieren's personal arc continues here, as her flashbacks to time with the hero party add a bittersweet sense of newfound appreciation of life with those dear to us, and yet also this ongoing grief-regret thing that is so relatable to me. Did I mention there are so many flashbacks in this show that have this effect? Love them. But it's often a bit 2 steps forward, 1 step back with Frieren, as she demonstrates when the village becomes under threat from what she deduces is an Einsam, a poltergeist-type monster that lures people to their deaths by taking on the form of their lost loved ones. Sounds like something a 1,000-year-old OP elven mage could handle, right? So, anyway, Frieren decides to flee to avoid danger. Which is weird, right? Maybe later in the season we'll find out why she would avoid such an easily winnable fight. Wink, wink. Okay, moving on. Fern convinces her that just like Himmel, who always went out of his way to help those in need, they too should help the village out. Which they do, despite Fern hesitating and nearly falling for the Einsam's tricks. Frieren comes to the rescue and exposes the true form of the Phantom. This experience inspires her to continue journeying through all these amazing landscapes to visit Heiter in Ariel along with Himmel. Did I mention the art and animation of this show is just so on point? Every one of these wide-shot backdrops belong in the Louvre. Arriving in the Villa region, the two mages encounter and engage a solar dragon guarding a grimoire, although failing at first to defeat it. Using her persuasiveness, Frieren recruits a local young warrior named Stark. Stark is, to put it simply, at a crossroads in his life. He was found by the one and only Eisen, Eisen from the hero party, when he was a young boy, and has been trained as a warrior by him. However, he still harbors mental and physical scars of his past, including from his training with Eisen, and is reluctant to face the dragon. Buoyed by Fern's stories of overcoming her own fears and a sense of duty to the village, he pushes through, attaboy, and together, all three fighters engage and defeat the beast. This experience forms a mutual bond between all three characters, and Stark becomes the warrior for this newly formed party, and they set off to continue their journey. The three adventurers have now made their way to the fortified city of Val in the Central Lands. They are quick to find difficult situations in Val, facing prohibitions such as restrictions on travel due to heightened monster numbers in the area and magical barriers. They are a resilient trio, however, and overcome these difficulties with unique, unconventional adaptability. Stark comes to the realization through personal reflection that he is now on his desired path in journeying towards self-discovery alongside Frieren and Fern. In the bustling city streets and amongst the complex labyrinth of political dynamics, they go forth into the underworld of Val and tangle with the local authorities in the name of moving on with their adventure. In a flashback, the original hero party unearths a grimoire that was supposedly written by Flamme, the legendary great mage that introduced magic to the humans. Frieren, having been the apprentice of Flamme, notes that this is yet another fake, alongside the many others that have been penned over the centuries. She reminisces about her former master's face, before the show jumps back to present day. This section of their journey to the north highlights the strained state of relations between elves and demons, which then leads to Graf Granat, the ruler of his own domain, the Graf, in the north, arresting and imprisoning Frieren, who then escapes. We have learned at this point in the show just how much enmity Frieren holds for demons, and their seemingly innate will to do evil against all humans. She has a short-lived but memorable showdown with a young demon named Drat, who tries to bore her to death with monologuing before attempting decapitation with unbreakable wires shooting from his hands. Frieren easily protects her neck before swiftly cutting off his arms, followed quickly by ending his life in a calm but powerful maneuver. Drat was the underling executioner of one of the slain Demon King's 7 great sages of destruction, Aura the Guillotine. He and 2 other executioners, Lugner and Linnea, had been sent to Graf Granat's heavily fortified domain in order to negotiate peace, quote unquote, all the while actually going there to insidiously take down the Graf's defenses from within, just for Aura to then take victory with ease. Frieren confronts Aura's undead army outside the magical domain wall before engaging with Aura herself. Aura arrogantly decides to use her signature move, Auserlaser. This attack is chilling to think about, guys, kind of like Russian roulette. This spell of obedience manifests as a set of scales, weighing up Aura and her opponent's mana levels, the larger of which deciding who would then be in control of the other's body entirely. Enter Frieren's coup de grace for the entirety of the show thus far. Turns out, she has been hiding her mana level for pretty much her entire life. Her entire life, guys. We see in another well-placed flashback her master, Flamme, teaching her at a young age that although it is surface-level ignoble and somewhat cowardly, suppressing one's mana level is an extremely powerful way to go through life undetected by their mutual, deceptively natured enemies, the demons, until they chose to take them down. So that's perhaps why Frieren initially refused to engage with the Einsam. Why break out the big guns if it could draw greater danger to her? I never doubted her. I may have doubted her. Okay, moving on. And so, to say Aura is taken aback by Frieren as her power level reveals itself would be the understatement of the millennium. Get it? Because Frieren is 1,000 years old. Oh, okay, moving on. Old man, moving on. The cocky sage of destruction exclaims that she is over 500 years old before realizing her fatal mistake when Frieren reveals her age and therefore superiority in this showdown. Ensnared in the Auserlaser trap she had unintentionally caught herself in, Aura is at the mercy of Frieren, who, in true demon-hating style, has no mercy at all. Frieren promptly orders the conniving demon to kill herself. Aura literally has no choice in the matter and, without delay, cuts off her own head. I love that Frieren here demonstrates true wisdom in how she lives, fights, and most importantly, decides when to kick butt. Not when she wants to, but when she needs to. All too often, in my honest and very humble opinion, a fantasy or shonen protagonist will show their true power early on in the series, but not our ancient girl, Frieren. Watching the battles in this show is like watching a veteran poker player dismantle all comers in a slow but steady show of superior experience and tactics. And we're here for it. Graf Granat informs Frieren's party that without one of them obtaining the classification of first-class mage, they will not be able to travel freely through the northern plateau. Therefore, their new goal destination now becomes Oizerst, home of the Continental Magic Association, and the location for all first-class mage examinations in the northern lands. On the way there, an unreal snowstorm forces them to take refuge for 6 months with a monk named Kraft before even making it to the Schwer Mountains. And turns out, Kraft is another elf, even older than Frieren, who is living in solitude, seemingly to help come to terms with the existential crises that are part and parcel of being the member of a dying immortal race of beings in a world that now well and truly belongs to humans. Did you ever watch Lord of the Rings? Not the Hobbit trilogy. Never the Hobbit trilogy. And feel that constant trickle of melancholy whenever you were reminded of the fact that all the elves were low-key exiting the world in the face of the rise of humankind? Yeah, well, there is a whole episode here where Frieren and Kraft address it, like, really well. Kraft wants validation for his existence in the aftermath of some great deed he performed in the past that, because of the short-lived nature of humanity, has been long forgotten. He's given up on leaving a legacy because, well, he's been there, done that, and then outlived its aftermath many times over. Frieren Beyond Journey's End, as a show, is generally a panoply of visual and narrative masterpieces all bunched together. The trio are eventually able to continue on and stop in at the village of the Sword in the Schwer Mountains, just north of the Decca region. This village is significant, as it is near the sanctuary of the hero's sword. Inside the sanctuary is, a sword. Duh. That, according to legend, was rammed into a rock by the goddess of creation herself. Apparently, only the hero who will drive off the great calamity bent on destroying this world can remove the sword. Arthurian legend reference. Many heroes throughout history have tried and failed to do this, including our very own Himmel of the Hero Party. On the road to confront the Demon King, the party had accompanied him to the sanctuary, where he, like many others before him, failed to pull the sword from the stone. Despite this being what must have been one hell of a sweaty-palmed, panicky reason to put off fighting the Demon King, Himmel simply chose to ignore the symbolic failure and decided to go on and fight anyway, which in itself is symbolic. Not of what a hero should be, but what a hero should aspire to be. Someone who finds failure and decides to move on and learn from it. Although in true Himmel style, he makes the party swear that they'll never tell anyone he couldn't pull the sword from the stone. You see, actions, not words, are repeatedly reinforced as the way to a worthy life in Beyond Journey's End. Himmel decided to continue his quest, and he succeeded despite the fact that history would label him as technically not a hero, and he succeeded. Good on you, Frieren Beyond Journey's End. Let's move on. Anyway, Frieren, Fern, and Stark spend a little time here in the Village of the Sword to fulfill a promise she is way overdue on to defeat the inundation of monsters that are attracted to the sword. In the process, they defeat the nefarious Lord of the Mountains, and we see a more lighthearted moment involving Frieren's clothes removal potion. The party moves on from the village feeling united in their quest, a strong unit in their prime of partnership. There seems no reason to add anyone else to the trio, right? Wrong. Oh yeah, and Stark turns 18 somewhere around here, while the party is in the Alpetite region. Happy birthday, bro. Zain, a priest from a small village in the Alt Woods, is a man in his 30s living with the indecision that has left him feeling bound to his home, yet regretful that he didn't go adventuring with his childhood friend, Guerrilla Warrior, long ago. The resulting outwardly deadpan personality that he wears like a mask defies a highly attuned inner understanding of others' emotions. And when he eventually does join the party, after some comfort and encouragement from the trio, who see the potential for this guy to have a second chance in life, he often mediates between Stark and Fern, who, after all, are still very young and don't always get along. Zine eventually decides that his best bet to find and join Guerrilla Warrior is to accompany Frieren's party on their journey, as long as it benefits this goal. Welcome to the show, buddy. So, Zine is the new old emo of the group, right? Wrong. As the four-strong party resumes their journey, he begins to feel like that tutor you didn't know you needed until you went along for kicks and voila, your grades suddenly went into Giga Chat mode. Zine is a welcome and mature voice of fatherly and big brotherly advice and reason to Stark and Fern in a way that Frieren hasn't really been able to match up to so far. And this is a timely addition, as Fern and Stark are about to have an epic argument. In the Rad region, Fern has her 18th birthday. Happy birthday, girl, I don't know. And Stark neglects to get her a birthday gift. Now, this could have been just another haha, aren't they funny when they argue, them darn teenagers with their digital Walkmans and their TikTok-tograms. But with the addition of Zine, the resulting conversations and reconciliation that the budding young warrior and mage go through is not only deeply touching, but provides the show creators another opportunity to show us the significance of Himmel in Frieren's journey of self-reflection and discovery. Long story short, Stark accidentally ends up getting a romantic gift of a bracelet for Fern, and this reminds Frieren of the time that Himmel bought her a similarly, yet more intentionally, romantic gift. Was Himmel really in love with Frieren, despite her ignorance of his feelings? Yeah. Wow. Not long after this moment where Fern and Stark shippers started to get a little bit excited on Reddit, their relationship prospects go into overdrive as they undertake etiquette training to convince the region's influential figures that Lord Orden, who has hired Stark due to him being a doppelganger of Orden's dead heir, is still in a position of prospect and power. The young duo's visually stunning dance scene at the end of this episode induced so many ship name polls on Reddit that we just couldn't keep up. By the way, my favorite was Stern, which in German means star. In all seriousness though, one of the minor yet significant joys of this series is watching Fern, who at first openly considered Stark a coward, learn to appreciate his growth and value as a close friend. There is no doubt that Zine's input into accelerating their mutual understanding and closeness was an intentional narrative tactic by the show creators, and a welcome one at that. Those kids have gotta grow up sometime, right? But when the party continue on their quest to achieve first-class mage status in Oizurst, they get word that Guerrilla Warrior has been spotted in the opposite direction to their goal destination. Zine is faced with a choice to either continue with his new companions or honor his original motive for joining them in the first place. He makes his decision and turns away from the party to seek out his childhood comrade in Tours. After becoming trapped by another blizzard, this time with Fern also coming down with a fever and being nursed back to health by Frieren, the party finally arrive at Oizurst in time for both Frieren and Fern, who is encouraged to do so by her master, to undertake the first-class mage exam. Mage hopefuls from all over the continent have entered into the exam alongside Frieren and Fern. The examination is to be split into 3 stages. A retrieval task in teams of 3 wherein a mana-sensitive bird must be captured, a dungeon raid that has examinees fight their conjured clone counterparts, and a final interview with Zerie, the great mage and head of the Continental Magic Association. More on her later. Those that pass the examination not only get the rank of first-class mage, but also get to learn any one spell of their choosing in Zerie's huge collection of grimoires. The stakes are high, guys. The exam arc of the story takes in a whole new range of characters like we have never seen before, in what is otherwise a small cast protagonist team fantasy slice of life anime that usually walks through and utilizes the landscape as a stunning backdrop to frame the deep running existential questions about the passage of time, mortality, and interpersonal connection that Frieren and her companions pose and solve. Well, usually solve anyway. But in this new arc, and just like an exam in real life, our beloved titular characters are kind of locked away in a classic arena scenario as they collaborate over, battle through, and in the case of several of the examinees, die in the face of the examination tasks set for them. Although, hopefully that last part isn't how your exams have gone in the past. Frieren and Fern are not placed in the same team. Frieren works with her teammates Kane and Lavine, who are already well acquainted and coordinate their magic effectively together. They spend a long time finding, observing, and coming up with a plan to capture their target, and do manage to catch it and pass the first round despite an aerial attack from a monster on Kane. Another team, led by the Elder Mage and Widower Denken, also manages to ambush Frieren's exam party during the first test. Lavina and Kane work together to engage opposing examinee Richter, who, aside from his mage study, owns a repair shop? Oh well, gotta earn that dough somehow, I guess. While Frieren single-handedly takes on Denken. Although they are resoundingly defeated, Denken's team do end up finding their own Stille and also pass the first round. Ah, everyone's friends in this death match of an exam. Fern, meanwhile, comes under the critical eye of her teammates as they consider the brand of magic she practices since traveling and learning from Frieren to be outdated and overly simplistic. Womp womp. But come on, guys, what else would you expect when learning from someone whose arsenal of spells is over 1,000 years old? Her team is attacked by Virbel, another prospective first-class mage, and his test party, and they have to defend their Stille as a result. The fight between Fern and Ere proves, at least to us in the audience, that it's not the spell you choose, but the amount of power behind it. Fern's old-fashioned attacks obliterate her opponent's complex-looking efforts to gain a superior footing, and her team successfully advances to the next round of the examination. Oh yeah, and I can't go any further without mentioning Ubel, the final member of Virbel's team, who comes across as kind of unhinged, showing no mercy or remorse, yet she's highly capable and aware in battle. She's a little bit psychopathic in the best possible way because it makes her a little bit OP, but maybe that's a discussion for another time. The second stage of the examination, a thrilling and deadly solo run to the bottom of an ancient tomb in less than 24 hours, begins, and wouldn't you know it, everyone decides to split into small groups again. You can obviously see what the creators of the show are trying to tell us, right? Of course you can. Without those of us around us to help us through tough times, we just find it hard. So come on, guys, find a group, find your freaks, and move on. Okay, back to the second task. Full of traps, stone monsters to come to life, and ultimately clones of the examinees themselves to fight with, this one's gonna put everyone's skills to the test. Still, despite the dangers and strict finish deadline, Frieren makes the most of the situation by seeking out every bit of loot she can find throughout the instance. I mean, she spent 10 years with Himmel, and old habits die hard, I guess. It might seem like a bit of side quest fun at first, but it is also just another example of the lasting impact that Himmel had on Frieren's life, possibly without her even knowing it. As the parties make their way through the tomb, the altogether creepy Spiegel monster does its thing and starts firing off doppelgangers at the would-be first-class mages. Without spending too much time on how this goes, let me just say that these fights are short but epic. Frieren devises a plan with Frieren to defeat Shadow Frieren, the most powerful of the shadow monsters. And after they manage to take it down in what can only be described as one of the most breathtaking fights of the show thus far, underscored by an amazing backing track, they proceed to take the Spiegel out. It is during this episode that we get to know a little bit more about Zerie, the head mage, and her views about magic through a flashback conversation with Frieren. Magic should be special, she says. And without having met her properly yet in the current day, we are already getting a bit of a vibe about her. More on this not too far in the future. Oh, actually, now. So, having finished the second task and in surprisingly large numbers, we find out later that there are usually a lot more, well, brutal deaths. The remaining examinees are interviewed personally by Zerie. What we know about this detached, coolly menacing-ish elven mage thus far has come from flashbacks. She was Flamme's teacher, and Flamme told her that neither of them would be the ones to defeat the Demon King, as they couldn't imagine a peaceful world. Flamme openly held out hope that Frieren would be the one to bring this world about, through the defeat of their foe, and she was right. Side note, Flamme was pretty much right about everything she predicted. Zerie has sharp and insightful instincts when judging examinees, however, is as emotionally unlearned as Frieren was back at the beginning of the show, and demonstrates this undeniable pettiness in Frieren's interview. They disagree over the fundamental worth of magic, and she coolly and cruelly fails Frieren at the final hurdle to becoming a first-class mage, despite her historically known badassery and undeniable OP status. The cherry on top here is that she then also bans her from returning to retake the test, or indeed step foot on any Continental Magic Association grounds for 1,000 years. Tell me you're insecure about another person without telling me you're insecure about another person, right? Fern, however, achieves the rank of first-class mage in her interview, which enables Frieren's party to continue on their way into the Northern Lands in search of Aureole. Guys, I cannot wait for the next season of this absolute banger of a show to rear its beautiful head. Thanks for listening, guys, and remember, be like Frieren. Love the daily side quest with those you treasure most. After all, it's all about the journey, the connection you make with others along the way, and the wonder at this beautiful life we have been given the opportunity to fleetingly live. See you next time.